Hello. Yes, Noura, thank you very much. Lena, can you hear me? Afnan. Lena, I want to ask Lena. Thank you, Afnan. Lena, yes, very good. Lena, you hear me? When I logged into the room after I finished my salah, did you log out of the room? I found your name. That's why I'm asking you in particular. I found your name on the board. Only, your name only, when I logged in. So have you left actually the room, ya Lena, and then you logged in again? Because this is important. Lena? Lena, are you hearing me? Do you hear me? Lena? You signed out. Good. That's good. Because you know why? If you don't sign out, all of you, and we start on another session, the other session will never open. So this is a new kind of technique that they told me about. And that's fine. Great. So inshallah, shall we start? It's not yet 5. We'll wait until 5, صح? So now we'll try to do our chapter 3. Okay. Chapter 3, I think we can do chapter 3, and I don't know if we'll have enough time to do chapter 4 as well. لأنه chapter 3 has got lots of information اللي هو language and ethnic group. هذه يعني in details اللي كنا نتكلم عليها, language and ethnic group. Language and ethnic group. And it's how many pages? From page 42 until page 60. Not that long really, but it has got lots of information that requires us to stop and acknowledge them. So if we have enough time, we can move to language and sex, and by so doing, we will be in the same level as the other group. Because now we finished in the other group, اللي هو chapter, we finished until chapter 4. Okay? Chapter 4 is language and sex, which is men and women. Yani females, males and females. Boy, girl, man, men, daughter, and son. And so on. So it's related to gender in particular. And it's not that complicated. So I think, and it's not that long as well. I think we can sort of have enough time, inshallah. Okay? Right. Let me have a look at the time. It's a couple of minutes. Yani a couple of minutes until 5:30, until 5 o'clock. What I want to tell you, young ladies, is that what time is the Maghrib? Yani Maghrib is coming just before we finish, at around 6, yeah? At around 6 o'clock. So I request that we continue and complete our session until 6:30, and then after we finish, and that's it, we go again like now, we go and pray for the Maghrib Salah, inshallah. Okay? After we finish. Thank you very much, Noura. Thank you for all of your consent and agreement and everything. Okay. Yeah, so we start recording now. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Recording started.
Yeah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Language and ethnic group. Now, the place or the country or the countries that are taken as an example, as the example of this chapter is the USA, and especially in the USA, I mean, they start with the USA. Ethnic group in the USA, and one of the ethnic groups is the colored speakers. In the past, they used to call them black. In the past, before during the 19th century and probably early 20th century, early last century, which was quite recent, relatively speaking, they used to call it black English against white English. يعني black English وكانوا ما يقولوا له dialect. Black English vernacular. ليه black English vernacular? Or they used to call it حتى يعني I want to get you to the abbreviation, which is black, yes, American black English vernacular, which used to appear as vernacular and not dialect. Vernacular means not even lahja. Lahja dialect. What is vernacular? Vernacular is less than dialect because it was spoken by black people. In the United States, racism was really, really high. No, Nora, it's not accent. Accent اللي هي النغمة، صوت accent. And dialect is لهجة. Vernacular معناها رطم، يعني بيرطموا كأنه رطم. It's really bad. So they started talking about this, and those communities that refer to fighting racism, against racism. And they used to say, why? They say, okay, never mind, we'll call it African American. لأنه بطلوا يقولوا لهم black Americans. They started calling them African Americans. Accordingly, they used to call their language AAVE, which is African American vernacular, برضو vernacular English. That's it, AAVE. And you can find this on the following pages, 50 as on pages, all of the pages in the book, 53, etc. I'll write like that. Those pages and before and after, they were talking about the fact that it started as black Americans and black speakers, when people who had been brought up with little contact with other blacks in predominating white areas, they used to say white Americans and black Americans, and very racist people according to color. So the experiment demonstrates two rather important points. First, there are differences between the English spoken by many whites and many African Americans in the United States of America, such as Americans can and do assign people with some confidence to one of the two ethnic groups. So here they have this kind of ethnic groups, and those ethnic groups are having their own distinct varieties of dialects. And why? Because as we know, before Abraham Lincoln and before all of these and the fighting against racism and everything, they used to have the two communities separated. Their hospitals are not the same, their schools are not the same, they recognize Americans or white speakers from this kind of background that separate them. So the change in the dialect wasn't easy. Now, the President of America is from that ethnic group of, the African Americans. His mom is white, he's American of, I don't know what kind of origin, but his dad is from a country in Africa, yes? We all know that. But his English, his American English, is not marked by the African American or the African American vernacular English, because he was educated, because after doing this kind of unity and between the North and the South and fighting the racism and everything, schools started to be mixed and hospitals and even toilets. There used to be toilets for black people and toilets for white people. Yani the racism was that high, as high as that. But I mean, it vanished. But I wonder why, yani in linguistics, we haven't actually made bigger change than just using African instead of black. Okay. So on this basis of the language, this might happen in all contexts of situations where you can change, find the differences between them. Okay, that was the experiment demonstrates two rather important points. The first point is that there are differences between English spoken by many whites and many African Americans in the United States of America, such as that Americans can and do assign people with some confidence to one of the two ethnic groups, right? With confidence. You say, مثلا, I is happy and I am happy. This kind of distinction. I am happy is usually the variety that is spoken by white people at that time, and until now in rural areas, as we said earlier, and solely on the basis of their language. This might happen in مثلا telephone conversation, for instance, which indicates that black speech and white speech, you see, and they're using it according to the color, so racist, have some kind of social reality because of what happened, because of the social situation as we understand. And which have shown that, for example, an area like Detroit, of all ages and social classes, remember we talked about these, have approximately 80% success rate in recognizing black from white. The second reason is that this experiment demonstrates that convincingly that although the stereotypes of black or English, like the stereotype I told you, I is and I am, the usage of verb to be the same with I, we is, he is, she is, all of them are is. And the white speech would have the standard kind of form. Convincingly, okay, listeners work with provide them with the correct identification. So that's another reason to identify them on telephone conversations and things. And on the telephone, the speaker will not say, excuse me, are you white or black? But they are very easily distinguished through their dialect, and accordingly they will be provided with the service that they like. What does happen is that speakers acquire the linguistic characteristics of those they live in close contact with. So members of two American ethnic groups we have been discussing learn the linguistic varieties. So we are talking about those linguistic characteristics or varieties associated with them in exactly the same way that social class dialects are acquired. And in those unusual cases, when white Americans live amongst African Americans or vice versa, the pattern acquired is that of the locally predominant group, which is the white. Obviously then, there is no racial or psychological base of any kind of linguistic differences. Right, okay. We mention this, however, the book is mentioning this, however, because in the past, as I told you, it was quite widely believed that there was or might be some inherent connection between language and race. So race was really marked in the past. For example, during the 19th century, the originally linguistic term Indo-European came also to have racial connotation, Indo from India and European from Europe. And it's coined to cover those languages of Europe, the Middle East, and India, which linguists had discovered were historically related to one another. Consequently, however, a myth grew up on the imaginary that Indo-European or Aryan race, who had not spoken the parent Indo-European language, but were also the genetic ancestors of the Germans, Romans, and Slavs, Greeks, Persians, and others who now speak Indo-European languages in Europe and so on. So it's all related to ethnic groups and racism, subconsciously, and we use them without really knowing that. Okay, now see page 44 now. On page 44, ideas about languages and race die hard. They die hard, however. And the German language, for instance, was an important component of the Nazis, because they believe that the German race is a master race. And also, these are false ideas about the possibility and desirability of preserving the linguistic purity. They were that closed mentality. Because of closed mentality, a person would think this way. And that's why it did not last. What else? So this may go hand in hand with equally false ideas about racial purity. When they say the Germans have the blue blood, which is racially pure. That's what it means, racially pure. Perhaps less harmful, but probably much more persistent, are references, for example, to the Romanians as a Latin people, i.e. of pure race, the purity, racial purity of people. So the world used to go like that. It stopped just recently, in the 20th century. So that's why people used to think and believe that they speak the Romance languages. And it is those who are more related to Latin people. It is true, of course, that Romanian represents linguistically a historical development of Latin. That's true. But it simply does not follow that Romanians are 100% genetically descendants of the Romans. Of course, there is a mixing between races. We cannot stop that. It's after all much more likely that they are as closely related genetically to their Ukrainian, Serbian, Bulgarian, and Hungarian neighbors. And now we will learn more about them, about the languages of the Serbians and Bulgarians and so on, and Hungarians and Ukrainians. It remains true, however, that in many cases, language may be an important or even essential continuant of ethnic group members. Language, like race. Like I'm not purely an Arab, I'm not purely a non-Arab. There are races that came into my blood from Europe, from Turks, Turkish people, maybe from Arabs, etc. So language is the same. On the other hand, for example, and particularly where languages rather than varieties of a language are involved, linguistic characteristics may be the most important defining criteria for ethnic group members, or membership. For instance, it's less accurate to say that Greeks speak Greek than to state that people who are native speakers of Greek, i.e. who have Greek in their mother tongue, are generally considered to be Greek. إحنا in the Arab world, There are plenty of people who speak Arabic and who are Arabs, but they don't have the Arab race. Okay? Do you see what I mean? Lina وأفنان وعبير ونورة. Arabic speaking and living in the Arab world is culture more than race. Yeah, hello? Are you there? Okay, thank you. That's fine. Just to make sure that you are following up with me. Okay, so here what we have is that in other cases, particularly where different varieties of the same language are concerned in connection between language and ethnic group, may be a simple one of habitual association and reinforced by social barriers between the groups where language is an important to identify characteristics. So by no means all American black speakers or all American blacks speak African American vernacular English. So that's why African American vernacular English is used, and you can see them like to be identified, like those people from Jamaica and those people from African origin and so on. There is the Jamaican English though, like the language of American that is used by people from that island. Okay, ethnic group differentiation in mixed community then is a particular type of social differentiation, and as such will often have linguistic differentiation associated with it. Differentiation of what? Differentiation between their own dialect against the standard. Cases of the first type where language is a defining characteristic of ethnic group membership are very common in a world scale. Situations of this are very usual in multilingual Africa, okay, multilingual because they use the African and the African languages and dialects plus French or English or, German. For example, in one suburb outside Accra in Ghana, there are native speakers of more than 80 different languages in Ghana. Yeah? There are more than 80 different languages. Okay, that's really devastating. It's amazing, including such major languages as Swahili, Hausa, Ewe, and Kru. So in most cases, individuals will identify themselves as belonging to which tribe. Okay, and people usually know more than 2 or 3 languages. They're called trilingual. Trilinguals. Like if we are considered as being trilinguals, it means that we know our mother tongue, which is Arabic, plus English, and a third language like French. In this case, we will be called trilinguals. So they are trilingual in most cases. The majority of inhabitants there. So the different ethnic groups there, therefore, maintain their separateness and identity as much so as languages. But in cases of the second type, in Canada is another example where the inhabitants are marked. Yani linguistic knowledge is marked. Canada is at least bilingual. It is a bilingual nation, French and English. Okay? And yeah. Bilingual information. Okay, so yani, both of them are spoken at the same level. That's the meaning of that. Unlike our Arab world, English is a foreign, not even a second language. It's a foreign language. Okay, in the second case type, and these are in many ways more interesting. The separate identity of ethnic groups is signaled not by different languages, but by different varieties of the same language. Like in the Arab world, the second type is differentiating, like our differentiating people of the same language from by different varieties of the same language. Of the same language, differentiating people by the varieties of the same language. The Arab world is a good example. Yes, do you get that one? It's a good example. The Arab world is a good example. We have all the dialects, and even the one dialect can be differentiated, like what we were talking about here. The dialect of Saudi Arabia is divided mainly into at least three basic dialects: the Hijazi dialect, the Najdi dialect, and the Eastern region dialect of Dhahran and Dammam and all that. Okay, now see page 46, please. Those who have the book. On page 46, there is pointed the social constructs. So ethnic groups are also relatively fluid entities. Because of that, they are fluid entities whose boundaries can change. Boundaries, linguistic, let us call it this way, linguistic boundaries are fluid in that they are not committed to the political frontiers or boundaries. Do you understand that? I.e., the change in dialect it doesn't happen like by drawing one separate line. So the change and which can come into or the new dialect of the same geographic region during the course of history, it's interesting to see that I mean it doesn't happen all of a sudden. For example, take this as an example, Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia. Do you all know the situation in Yugoslavia? Is it Yugoslavia anymore these days? Is it called Yugoslavia? Abir, Lina, Nora? Is it called Yugoslavia now? Excellent, Yanura. No, it is not called Yugoslavia. There has been this breakup in 1990. There was that breakup that breakup of Yugoslavia, it's not only Bosnia and Nora. It was broken up into 3 or 4 different nations. You know, there was the Northwest, and in Northwest it's called Slovenia. I'll write them like that for you, so that when we talk, you understand. Oh yes, Herzegovina and Herzegovina. Yes, 1 second. And in the northeast, so we have northwest, and then the northeast, bravo aleki, Nora, and others, I'm sure that they know. There is the Hungarian, the speakers of Hungarian. And all of these are speakers of different languages. And before the breakup, the speakers used to be there as well. In the center, there is what we call Croatia, yeah, and Bosnia, and Serbia, right? This is in the center. In the southwest, what is there? There is Albania, the Albania and the Albanian speakers. In the south, there is what we call Slavic Bulgarian. Okay? See? It's a complex society, a complex situation. Slavic Bulgarian. طيب. This is politically speaking. Let's just concentrate on, you know, the capital of Bosnia is Sarajevo, you know that. Anyway, what happens is that in the breakup which took place in 1990, we said 1990, there became, because language is an identity for people. Before that, there wasn't that distinct identity of these languages used in Yugoslavia. In Yugoslavia, all these languages used to be spoken by people without caring much to differentiate between them. Bulgarian, Albanian, Slavic, Bulgarian, there is Hungarian and Bulgarian, and there is Slovenia. There is also standard Slovenia, and there is the Serbo-Croatian that was spoken by the Serbs, the Croatians, and the Bosnians. Okay? And what else do we have? We have the Serbian and the Croatian and the Serbian, what is it called? Okay, and in the West there were also dialects spoken. In the central Yugoslavia, previously called Yugoslavia, in the center, there used to be lots of other dialects and so on. So the situation is very, very nice to understand and to talk about. It's a complex linguistic situation. So this case of Yugoslavia, I want you to read it. Read about, لسه حنتكلم أكتر عليه, about the case of Yugoslavia on pages. I'll write the page numbers 46, 47, and part of 48 as well. Okay, so on page 47 now, what we have is that, identifying for us the effect on ethnic groups, the case of Yugoslavia, that is related to history, not only to linguistic fluidity, like the fluidity that we were talking about between boundaries. The boundaries do not have anything to do with the linguistic boundaries. So this kind of heteronomous kind of situation is found there. And in 1918 to 1945 onwards, until 1990, that was the situation. In 1990, after the breakup, the dialects of Yugoslavia were Macedonian, and it was actually identified more more because it relates to the identity of people after the breaking up. So we had all these nations, and all these nations started to identify their languages. Okay? And so this was related to history. It is also related to politics as well as to religion. Because here we have Catholic Christians, Roman Catholic Christians are the Croatians, and they are dominated by the Western area. And then we have religion as well concerning the Serbians, and it was associated with the Serbian ethnic group, who were dominated in the eastern part of the area and were traditionally Orthodox Christians, right? So here we have Croatians were natives of Croatia, therefore had a choice. They could say that they were native speakers either of Serbo-Croat or of Croatia, and Serbs who had grown up in Croatia, on the other hand, and who spoke in exactly the same way as would perfectly say they spoke Serbo-Croat. So the same would apply in reverse to Serbs and Croats living in Serbia. We have also the Muslim people of Sarajevo, the capital in Bosnia, and they also speak the what do we call Serbo-Croat. But at the same time, they say, why would the Serbs call the Serbo-Croat Serbian, and the Croatians who use Latin alphabet call their language Croatian, and we don't call our language according to our ethnic group. So there was the what do you call it, the Serbian ambassador in the United States, in the United Nations, started for the first time after the breaking up and after that war and the ethnic cleansing and, you know, the killing and the slaughtering of the Muslims at that time. After this has taken place, right, after that, there was the kind of identity for each part, for each ethnic group, and we announced in the United Nations that the language used by the Muslim Serbian, what do you call it, Muslim Bosnians, will be called Bosnian language. And that has actually identified the Bosnians as Muslims using their own language name, or giving that particular name to their language, like exactly against what the Serbians and the Croatians were actually giving their minority, their language. And that term of referring to them as Serbo-Croat is vanishing. So the Serbians have used Serbo-Croat, and in order to differentiate it from the Croat, the alphabet they use is the Cyrillic, sorry. Serbs use the Cyrillic alphabet. You know that Cyrillic alphabet is the same as the alphabet that is used. I'm sorry, I wrote Cyrillic, I spelled it wrongly. It is spelled like that. Cyrillic, like that. The Cyrillic alphabet is like that one which is used by the Russian alphabet, you know. It's not like the Roman alphabet that we use, the Latin alphabet. On the other hand, in order to differentiate writing, the Croatian language, Croats, okay, choose to write their variety their linguistic variety using the, what do we call it, the Latin alphabet. The same as alphabet. The same as the Bosnians. Alpha, sorry, I'm writing it wrong now. Alpha, like that. Alphabet. You know the A, B, C, the alphabet that we use for writing English. So here the Cyrillic alphabet is also used, as I told you, by Russians and by Ukrainians and by Macedonians in the south part, the southern part, and Bulgaria. And Bulgarians and all those people use the same kind of Cyrillic alphabet. So please try to read that and put it on tables and try to understand it. It's not that difficult. Okay. Now this is one thing. How did they? Now this is how they differentiate their languages from one another, because it's the same language as we said, the Serbo-Croats. They differentiated through their alphabet in writing, as well as their vocabulary and lexical forms and expressions. Serbs started to cross out all those words that come from Turkey, the Turkish words. On the other hand, Croats used to keep some of them, but the Bosnians, the Muslims, have shared a lot with the Turkish language, and they kept all of them. So that's how you tend to realize that this is this language and that is that language and so on, although they sprout out of a similar language. Another example to show this kind of ethnic group variation is the American English variety spoken by Italian Americans okay, and Jewish Americans. And Jewish Americans have a special name that is given to them, which is what? Can you remind me with that name? It's called Yiddish. Okay? I want to place it for you. Yiddish, that's the word, yes. That's how they call them. And they are really marked. Okay, Yiddish and Italian, substratum variety. So these are called substratum variety of American English. حتى even in the أفلام, in the American films, if the person is Jewish, you can see from his dialect, and they are proud of showing it. You know, they're not ashamed or scared or whatever. So here, Yiddish accent in English, let us say. So in this case, in the first generation, especially old people now, they can't change it because it is with the vowels. So it is led to hypercorrection of foreign features by the second generation. The second generation, the new, the young generation, let us say, the young generation start to correct their way of pronouncing these, either the Jewish Yiddish accent or the Italian accent, by correcting themselves, and they start to do this kind of correction, and it is called it is named hyper correction. Okay? Hyper correction. Because it's called hypercorrection, young generation hypercorrection of foreign features by the second generation. For example, one of the characteristics of New York English, as we saw in the previous chapter on page 38, remember, has been the development of high vowel of beard, okay? Like words in beard, like beard, like beard and beard, you know? That's how they pronounce the beard and the beard for bad and bad. And it seems that, حتى seems would say seems, like that, very high vowels. This development has accelerated by the desire, presumably subconscious, of second generation Italians as well to avoid speaking English in an Italian accent. So native speakers of Italian tend to use a type of vowels, like instead of beard, it would be bad and bag instead of beard and beard. So you can realize them, you can't mistaken them. So these are the different accents, New York Jewish people and New York Italian people, of beard and bag, you know, that's a difference. A symbol of identification. And another one is like the vowel in lost and dog, oh. So like of, like dog and lost. The hypercorrection may be responsible for this, or responsible, yeah. So many native Yiddish or Jewish speakers who have learned English as a foreign language do not distinguish the O of coffee and cop. They would say cop like coffee, right? And this is on page C, also pages 49 and 50 for this kind of discussion. It's a beautiful kind of discussion, young ladies. Okay, another example is in Scotland. Yesterday, one of your friends was asking me about the Anglo-Saxon. Remember the Anglo-Saxon? And in Scotland we have ethnic groups as well. And it is Highland Scotland versus Lowland Scotland. Highland Scotland and Lowland Scotland. What about them? Okay, what about them is in Highland Scotland. I mean, most Scots today tend to think themselves as simply Scottish. They don't say we are Anglo-Saxon or we are from the lowland or the hybrid of whatever. So in the history, historically speaking, they represented descendants of two distinct ethnic groups. The Highland Scots, whose ancestors were originally from Ireland, okay, and they were called Gaels or Celtic, yeah, Gaels. The Gaels like that versus the Anglo-Saxons. So these are the two ethnic groups in Scotland. The Gaels used to speak the Gaelic language or Gaelic or Celtic language, as many of them still do in the West Highlands and on the islands of the Hebrides. While Low Scots or Lowland Scots, like English people, were ultimately Germanic, and the Anglo-Saxon descent, Germanic, Anglo-Saxon are more like Germanic and not Irish from Ireland. So here Scotland is this kind of different ethnic group example. In that type of English, one can hear in different parts of the country, lowland speakers speak either the local dialects of Scots and or standard Scottish English, the local, yeah? So go and read more about this substratum that influences Gaelic. The British government has stopped the Gaelic for some time from being taught at schools, but native speakers of Gaelic, of course, will often have the Gaelic accent in their English, but one can detect lexical and grammatical differences as see differences on page 51. You can see the structural differences. Those are like the West Highland versus the Standard Scots English. So the West Highland English would be like, take that whiskey here. The other Standard Scots English will be, bring that whiskey here. They drink a lot of whiskey. They make the whiskey anyway. So here, West Highland of England would be, the variety would be, I'm seeing you. The other one would be, I can see you. And it's not that I am, and I don't want that in Standard Scots English. See? That I'm wanting. Right. So these views cannot be ultimately altogether ignored today. Even if we have consciously avoided racism and the ethnic group, we cannot just ignore them because they exist. The influence of this earlier racist view lingered in the following ways. Okay, so here, since differences in black speech had formerly been argued as a sign of inferiority, it remained difficult to acknowledge that black speech actually was different without the view appearing to be racist. Racism always marks this kind of differences, and inferiority and superiority is always referring to the attitude. The attitude was the ethnic group counterpart to the view, also recognized as false the difference between social dialects implied in linguistic superiority of one another. People start probably imitating the way the higher class speak, or maybe to stick to the standard form more than anything else. On pages 52 and 53, there is the African American vernacular English and the discussion of that, and all of these tables and different usages, also more examples are given. Okay, on pages 54 and 55 and 56 and 57 until the end, until page 60, about African American vernacular of English. Okay, I'll go over some of them. Like on page 55, we have some grammatical differences central to this argument concerning African American vernacular of English. Speakers do not have the S with the third person. They also, the African American vernacular of English is having the copula absent. So they would say she real nice instead of saying she's really nice or she is real nice. They are out there. They don't say are. They say they out there. See the examples on top of page 55. He not American instead of he is not American. If you're good instead of if you are good. You're going to heaven. You are going or you will go. And so on. So another most important characteristic of African American vernacular of English is the so-called invariant be. So they use be without variation. So they would say he usually be around instead of is. Sometimes she be fighting. Sometimes we, when they do it, most of the problems always be wrong. She be nice and happy. They sometimes be incomplete. See? So more examples are given also on page 55 and page 56. African American English vernacular would say he busy right now. The standard would be he is busy right now. There are lots of examples, and it takes us to the fourth difference, which is on page 56. On page 56, there's also another interesting feature of African American vernacular of English syntax, as in the following. In standard English, the wide variety of non-standard English, the following sentence types can occur. Standard English would say, we were eating, and the white non-standard will be, we was eaten without the ga at the end. And drinking too, there is no ga at the end. So another interesting feature of this, the African American English has affected also the lower standard. Yani white standard, white non-standard, we call it non-standard. Okay, a fifth point is that three final grammatical characteristics of African American vernacular English worthy of mentioning is that the question in inversion, existential it, and the negative auxiliary. It occurs with them. Rules for question in inversion, like when you say is he instead of he is, this is kind of inversion, yani qalb. So he is coming, is he coming, this is the inversion. So the inversion here, the rule for question inversion in indirect questions in African American vernacular English from those of standard English, and the result of sentences will be like, I asked Mary, where did she go? And I want to know, did he come last night? Existential it, who cares, where standard English has there, for example, it's a boy in my class named Joy. Instead of saying there is a boy, the African American English would say it's a boy. It ain't no heaven. So they have two negations, ain't and no. Heaven for you to go to. And doesn't nobody. So we have doesn't and nobody, two negations. Know that it's a God, and they say a about God. So in African American vernacular of English, if a sentence has a negative, indefinite, like nobody or nothing, then the negative auxiliary doesn't or can't is possible to be placed at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, go on, read more about these in the couple of pages until we come to the end of this chapter, so we have enough time, inshallah, to cover chapter 4, which is language and sex. Let me just have some conclusion for chapter number 3. Okay. So here, at the moment, American linguists are not agreed as to exactly what is happening. However, it has been shown that sound changes that are occurring in the vowel system of white speakers in, for example, Philadelphia, such as the raising of the vowels in words like white and type, instead of write and type, are not occurring in the English of black speakers. So black speakers will not use that kind of rising vowels. Instead, it appears to be undergoing some grammatical changes rather than phonological changes. Yani changes in the actual dialect and not in the accent as such, which are not affecting white dialect at all. For example, the usage of future resultative or be done appears to be a new and increasing common grammatical device in the speech of young African American vernacular of English. So we don't say it's wrong, we say it is a variety, right? Never say this is not proper usage or it's wrong usage. You say it is a variety that appears in that kind of speech or dialect. So, as in this example, observed in Los Angeles by the African American sociolinguist John Bowe. I'll be done, killed that motherfucker, I'm sorry about the language, if he tries to lay a hand on my kid again. I'll be done. I am going, yani I'll be done, killed that terrible person if he hits my son. Okay, that's end of that's ending. Let me just write it in proper English, in standard English. That's the end of chapter 3. Are you all following? Please just give me a kind of notation by saying that, okay, and we will start with chapter 4 now. Is it okay with everybody, please? Thank you very much, Yanura and Maram. How about you, Lina and Abir? Abir is marked away. Yes, Maram, what is your question, please? Yes, Lina, thank you. Maram, what is your question? Yeah, what kind of question will it be? Okay, there are terms, linguistic terms that we came across, like the stratum, the continuation, the continuum, and all of that. Identifying them, the vernacular of English, why is it called vernacular, and what kind of differences you can find between, مثلا, the different languages in Yugoslavia, the previous Yugoslavia, which is now has a breakup in 1990, all of these. You find a straightforward kind of identification for these, okay? And in all chapters, not only in this chapter. You might be asked to identify them and to define them. You define them as a result of your straightforward studying. Another example, of questioning is that you might be given data and you will be asked to identify the differences in the characteristics, the linguistic characteristics of this data, okay? And to put them in numbers and in tables or so on. Or you might be given a table, not necessarily from the book, other tables of data, and you will be asked to classify them and to use the terms that have been used in the chapter. These are kinds of questions, yeah, Maram. Okay, and Lina, and Noura, of course, and Abir. Another question, ya Maram, before we start with chapter 4? Or anybody else, yani anyone? Any question? Thank you, Maram. How about Noura, Lina, Abir? Shall we start now with chapter 4, which is language and sex? Yani the word sex doesn't mean the bad sense of sex, but yes, Abir, thank you. But it means gender, yani, okay? Gender. Yani gender in terms of man, woman, boy, girl, and for example son and daughter. Distinctions. This is the kind of distinction of sex that is used here. The distinction in language, what really concerns us. There are plenty of tables and which are related to classes. We already finished with the society classes, societal classes, which is again upper middle class, and we try to classify our own class. Upper middle class, lower middle class, and upper working class and lower working class, and against the differences in gender. The word gender is used as well, not only sex. So sex is a general kind of term that is used. Okay, do you agree with that? Like what? The gender kind of language difference. Do you think it occurs? Do you think difference in gender occurs? Do you think, girls? Yes. How does it occur? Let's just start by this question so that you start getting the idea clearly. How does it work in our society? And if you think about in terms of our society, in the Hijazi and the Arab society and us as حتى احنا عندنا, it's more distinct, more obvious, because we have the segregation. The two genders are usually separated, and the men have their own majlis, women they don't mix, universities don't mix, just in very, very public places, like in hospitals, probably in airports we mix, but generally in closer social communities the separation occurs, and in this case the distinction between the two dialects, the distinction between the two genders is very obviously marked. Yeah, can you see that? Okay, now in German, for example, we have to specify whether a friend is male, like, in the language itself, not only in the society, also in the language, linguistic gender. Linguistic gender is when you have, like, in English, lion, and what is the female of lion? Any idea? Young ladies, Abir, Lina, Maram, Noura. Maram, you don't have any idea about the female of a lion? احنا عندنا بالعربي two different حتى terms. عندنا, oh my god, يا بنات ليه ما بتقروا? Why don't you read English? This is very bravo. طيب, in Arabic we have Asad, we have Labu'a. Labu'a is different altogether than Asad. In English, it's derived. It's the same as lion, but it is lioness. So in English, you add the E, double S to many words to mark the female, the feminine. So we have masculine, okay, and feminine. And that's how, it's not only how men and women speak, it's also linguistically in the language. We have inflections. In English, it inflects with ES, like ambassador. The ambassador is a male. If the ambassador is a female, we say ambassadress, right? We have the headmaster as a mudir. We have the headmistress as a mudira. For medical doctor, لو كانت دكتورة ولا دكتور, we say about him or her doctor. I haven't come across doctor and doctoress, no. Okay, But in German, for example, they say for a female friend, Freundin, and for a male, Freund, only Freund. And I'm not showing off. It's written in your book. You can read it, okay? I don't know German. I know a little bit of German, but I don't know German. So in English, they don't do that. So some languages have the inflection for feminine and masculine more than others. How about in Arabic? Bravo, Yalina. We have actor and actress. In Arabic, it's more inflected command. The inflection comes with the حتى يعني الادجكتيف. نقول كبير وكبيرة تاء التأنيث. Bravo. Yes. So it's the ta which is for feminine, the feminine inflection ta. So we have يعني وردة حمراء. We have the red flower. What we don't know about flower in English. Is it a she or a he? They don't go as far as that. In Arabic it's more marked. In English we have the it. So that's why we don't know if. In French as well, the feminine and masculine is also marked. Do you know French? Yeah, like the double E. What is the double E, Amaram? I don't understand. What do you mean? The double E in what? For feminine? In what? In Arabic or what? Yani in English command, in French, the A, the accent, that's right. So in French, we have the French feminine. Feminine in French is marked with an E at the end, like premier and première, like all of these, when they end with an E at the end, then we can sort of, يعني, وحتى في الpronouns. The pronouns are inflected as well. In English, before we leave English and French and all that, we can have it also not only S, like lion, lioness, ambassador, ambassadress, but sometimes like chairman, we have chairwoman. حتى يعني in the past, in the early past, يعني recently, ما كانوا يستعملوها freely. Now it's used freely, chairman and chairwoman. And sometimes they say chairman about a woman. It doesn't really make much difference. With pronouns, look at the pronouns. Pronouns is another يعني linguistic area where we find those distinctions between males and females. More than English. English we have they, yeah, for the plural. But in English, in French we have il, like that, and for the masculine, and elle, like that for the feminine. Hum wa hum wa hunna. Hum wa hunna, yeah, we have it in Arabic. Hum wa hunna. In Polish as well, in Slavic language. In Polish, we have he arrived and she arrived, and they are different. Yani he arrived, it is like przyszedł, and she arrived in przyszedła. You know, in Spanish as well, we have all that. So, number of possibilities for how this obligatory grammatical expression of one's own sex may occur, and it may not occur at all. So we have one example is that it may not, yeah, we have vous and no, but it doesn't show لو no كانت feminine or masculine يا مرام. حتى vous انتم لكن هم وهن موجودة. حتى بالعربي بالعربي أكتر عندنا أنتم وأنتن. لكن when you say نحن, does it show لو كانت nous, tu, ou tu? Yes, nous ou tu, there it doesn't have any gender. So we have 4 cases generally. The first case in general, يعني, it may not occur at all in the pronouns. Like English, first person I, you don't know whether تقولي أنا لو كانت أنا masculine or feminine. English, Arabic, all of that. Number 2, it may occur through the usage of adjectival gender. يعني happy, like when you say je suis heureuse, je suis heureuse, je suis heureuse, يعني I'm a happy woman. Je suis heureux, يعني I'm a happy man. Okay? Je suis for a male, I'm happy. Je suis heureux, je suis heureuse. Alright? In Arabic we have the ta مربوطة as you said. أنا سعيدة وأنا سعيد. يعني فرحان وفرحانة. زعلان زعلانة, whatever. The third one is that it may occur through the usage of distinct gender-marked verb form. In Polish, you say in Arabic we have all of them, by the way. It says service schlimm, whatever. If it is a woman, and service lam and lim, I arrive. So it is through on a verb. In English we don't have it on a verb. He arrives, she arrives, whatever, it doesn't show. But in Arabic we have it. أتيت, أنا أتيت, لا أنا وصلت. لا والله, it's not used in this verb. لكن هن وصلنا, هما وصلتا أو وصلا. You know, when وصلتا, it's a ta مربوطة, it's a feminine. Number 4, which is more remarkably, yani it's more rich, you find that it may occur through the usage of distinct first-person singular pronouns. Some languages have not only, as we just saw in the case of Spanish, different forms of the first-person plural, we, but also for the singular one, which is I. The New Guyana language, Liyandala, has the form mun, which means I masculine, and Nyan, which is a feminine one. Okay, notice that this is a rather remarkable phenomenon. طيب كيف الأسئلة حتيجي؟ الأسئلة حتيجي إنه probably you will be given a piece of data to analyze وتحطي number 1, number 2, number 3 زي هذه. يا إما data is given to you and you are asked to analyze it and show how does the feminine and يعني language and gender, how is it how is it realized? On page 64. Okay, again, if we go to the case of Yugoslavia, احنا حبينا يوغوسلافيا هلا عرفنا عنها. Indian language as well. And in this chapter, طبعا dealing with aspects of linguistic differentiation does not appear to be acceptable to the same kind of explanation. It is known from linguistic research that in many societies the speech of men and women differ in all sorts of ways. So when we say language and sex, we mean gender and we mean the differences between women and men's talk. Okay. An American Indian language called Gross Venter from the northeastern part of the United States, palatalized dental stop in men's speech corresponds to palatalized velar stop in the speech of women men. So here, men would say jatsa. Women will say kyatsa for bread. Jasta and kyasta. Do we have this in Arabic dialects? Like between men and women? Not in the Hijazi. In the Hijazi, do you have this? In the Hijazi? In the Hijazi, men and women pronunciation of kinds of, no, well, Nora, you might have. I don't have anything in my mind now, but you might have. I have an example from Egypt, the Egyptian, dialect. Women would, the qaf, the example of qaf, صح? Women would use the glottal stop, أقول صح? Men would say أقول, and not in Cairo, in the capital, but generally. Yani when women becomes more related to rural areas, they might say أقول right? And the ja as well. جبت وجبت جاموسي وجاموسي صح؟ Right? Again in Yukagir is a Northeast Asian language. Tia and Dia is used. And Sa and Za. The Za is more of masculine. The Sa is more like feminine. And so on. So here on page, if you read with me on page 65, it says that the men have a great many expressions peculiar to them. This is not only pronunciation, it's also appearing with the expressions by men and women, yani differences. That is on page 65. So, but never pronounce themselves. On the other hand, the women have words and phrases which the men never use, or they would be laughed to scorn, yani they would be a laughing stock. Thus, it happens that in their conversation, it often seems as if the woman had another language than men. Do we have this kind of thing, yani certain expressions that are not used by men but used by women, or expressions that are used by women but men avoid it so that people will not laugh at them, yani it's not a masculine kind of expression. Do we have this in our society? Abir, Lena, well, Abir left. She left the room. Maram, Noura, Lena, do we have them? They are involved. See all those examples on pages 66 up till 69. Okay, now on page 69, another clue comes again from another language where older speakers versus younger speakers take place, I mean the difference. And below is showing the differences in different parts of the world. Much of the evidences for gender differences in English has come from some of the sociolinguistic research carried out by Britain and America that we have already mentioned, but we also have evidences from Australia, South Africa, where English is used, of course. New Zealand has got also the English used, and so on. Okay, so this is concerning speakers of yani old and younger speakers. Also, differences between speakers of classes. Differences of classes, societal classes, yeah. اللي هي قلنا upper middle class and lower working class, and the females and the males. Usually males don't care to talk like the lower working class, but females are more conscious, and percentages are given according to studies on pages 70 up till all of these pages are talking about these consciousness by women more than men. Pages 70 up till 72. See all the tables and the studies, and yeah. So here in English we have RP and non-RP. And on page 73, you can see that, in fact, we can say that gender differentiation of this type is the single most consistent finding. Okay, so the correct answer is that we do not know exactly, but sociolinguistics have come up with a number of different and necessary speculative suggestions. These are suggestions. I can read them very quickly so that we can sort of see them together before the end of the class. There are, firstly and secondly, the first one says that it has been pointed out that working class speech, like certain other aspects of working class culture in our society, seems to have connotations of or associations with masculinity. This is in the working class, on the masculinity. And on the other hand, men are more favorably disposed to non-standard linguistic forms. They don't care, but women do care. They care about sticking to the more standard form. Secondly, it has also been pointed out that many societies seem to expect a higher level of adherence to social norms and better behavior from women. Okay? So this is very important, and that you can see on pages 72, 73 and 74. Okay? Also see pages 74 and 75, where actually accent can also be different in sex between men and women. Yani, for example, not only in England, in the UK and USA. Again, Labov has studied that by seeing the difference between pronouncing the word tune and good and nice, and also it's more prestigious to convert prestige, because attitudes of this type are not usually overtly expressed, and men wouldn't show that they are concerned about this. Okay, what would we have on page number 7? Number 70, page number 76. It talks about self-evaluation of tune in Norwich. So the glide used claimed and the glide used not claimed. So in Norwich is the actual glide users, when you say with the glide like tune, and without the glide it is tune. So when it is tune, it means that they are less standard. When it is tune, it is more standard. So that's the difference. Yani women would always say tune more than tune about the word tune. That one. Okay? That study was done in the UK. Also in Norwich, I don't know, maybe the writer has been collecting lots of data from that city in the UK. Also the usage of ear and ear, you know, for ear and idea here and here, or here, ear and ear, etc. So it shows that males would use like more tune than women. Females would use more tune, and also with the ear and ear in males and females, the difference is on page 77 is very clear. Okay, you can see the tables. I told you, Yani, it's full of tables. And also the pronunciation of the R is discussed between men and women on pages 78 and 79. You can see that. And the percentages in the group and the age group is found with relation to the classes. You know, the society classes, the middle class, lower middle class, upper working class, middle working class, and lower working class, with the age group as well, between 10 and 29, and 30 and 49, 50 and 69, and 70 and above. So here, the round vowels of the RP type are on the increase, as these age group figures for the percentage of unrounded vowels show. For wrong, the word wrong and other words involved like top and top. Okay, as a conclusion, what do we say here? As a conclusion to conclude, gender differentiation in language then arises. Why? Because we have already seen language as a social phenomenon, you know, it's closely related to social attitude, because it refers to the attitude, you know, the, what you would call it, the identity, language identity, and so on in the society. On the other hand, for language and sex, men and women are socially different in that society layers, and they are different in social roles as well, the role of women and the role of men in the society, and expect different behavior patterns from them. So language simply reflects this social fact. It is subconsciously reflected on the language that we use. Then it is likely that gender differs in language will change or diminish also. Like saying مثلا headmaster and headmaster for both of them, for men and for women. That's how it may diminish. If moreover we want what society layers down for women and men to change, then one way to do this may be to focus to a certain extent to language and try and change that. This is discussed in the last chapter, chapter number 10. So here we have social attitudes that may play a big role. In turn, clearly have a close connection with the importance of identity. We talked about this, the importance of identity. We saw in the previous chapter that language can play an important part in signaling a speaker's ethnic identity. So we now have to suppose that signaling one's gender identity is equally important, the gender identity. If you don't care, then you will have your own language spoken. So that's identity. So different first person, singular person, pronoun for male and female speakers are clearly not necessary in any absolute sense. You know, in Hijazi you might say, a woman might say, قلت يا واد فكك منهم يا واد. You know, so wad here can be used by the new generation, not by me, by my generation probably, but by, you know, yeah, Maram, you wanted to say something? Okay, so it remains, the change remains related to one person's identity for gender. So also we have to assume, do the different lexical, phonological, and grammatical variables that we have just been discussing. طبعا the change will not happen in one day or in one, you know, 1 year or tens of years. It requires longer time for the change, but the change becomes faster if the identity was clear to people, which is actually the case. these days with the new generation. Banat, it's nice meeting you. And now we have finished our class. Do you have any question before we actually depart? Before we leave? Noura wanted to say something. Yes, Noura, what is your question? Please go ahead. And also Maram wanted to say no. Maram said no, thank you. Yes, what is it that you want to ask you, Noura? Yeah, Noura, what is your question? What about the books we should buy? Buy this book, and the other book is by Stockwell. You know Peter Stockwell, 2007. And as I told you, this is only as a supplementary material. It's not part of our final exam, but I will go over it maybe, or over some parts of it, only chapters A, part of B, and part of C, as I have identified to you. They no longer have it? Okay, I'll try to leave a copy of mine in our university campus. Alright? Tomorrow, inshallah. Tomorrow I have a class between 8 and 11. So at 11 o'clock when I finish my class, I will go to the library and leave a copy of my own book. Is that okay, Maram and all of you? I will leave that copy, and inshallah, you go and collect it. Alright, shall we now go and leave? Say goodbye. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Can you all sign out, please, so that we can keep the recording and everything. Thank you.
Recording stopped.